Raising athletes, the things that causes all dads to go bald and moms to buy minivans, empowering parents to help their kids succeed. Raising athletes is a big responsibility. And as a parent, especially if you're like listening to the show or watching the show, you're here because you care about learning more information that can help your kids succeed or help you succeed in raising them. And that's why you're here. So you got this investment there and it makes sense. And there's a subject, listen, it's been talked a lot about. People within this particular subject have very strong opinions, and that has to do with coaches, paid coaches versus what publicly has been labeled daddy coaches. And it's really one or the other. And people that sit on either side of the aisle are crazy, passionate, stubborn, even heated when it comes to their perspectives on what's more important. And so this is today's topic, is the dad coach versus the paid coach. What are the pros? What are the cons? We're going to cover this. So I'm going to first sort of like just outline what are these public perceptions, the pros and the cons of both. We're going to get a little bit into my opinion here, but ultimately what I'm trying to achieve is to bring everyone to a healthier place when they have a better understanding based on armed with facts, so that it leads them to a place of making a great decision of what's best for their kids. So the dad coach versus the paid coach. And so let's get first into outlining the pros and the cons of both. Now, the dad coach, some of the perceptions, stereotypes as it relates to this label of now the dad coach, some of the negative perceptions that includes favoritism, lack maybe of experience, too emotionally invested, resisting modern methods. Some of the positive perceptions includes being deeply invested in the kids, they're community driven, they're flexible, they're understanding. Some of the negative perceptions of paid coaches is that they are money driven, less personal connections, maybe overly competitive, they lack loyalty. Some of the positive perceptions of a paid coach include, being highly experienced, or they could have some level of expertise. Maybe they've got some recruitment and exposure experience that they can lean on. They're structured, maybe disciplined, maybe a little bit less biased. These are some of the common perceptions as it relates to these different two things. What's so interesting about this is new. This is a new sort of philosophy, a new sort of approach to picking a coach that did not exist 25 years ago. I remember when I was a teenager and I was playing travel sports, there was no label of paid coach that, at least if the coaches were paid, it wasn't something that was talked about, and it wasn't talked about in a positive or negative way that led people to thinking, oh man, you got a daddy coach, oh that's bad or that's better. That definitely was not a common discussion at all. But what happened is travel sports became a business, and that business resulted in much more sort of like a study, paying close attention to details as far as from the perspective of a parent. And then it also became competitive as a business to what are some things that we can leverage as an asset publicly and promote and advertise and say, hey, this is an advantage of using us. Here's a great asset. We have paid coaches, right? And then over time, we've developed these public perceptions based on whether or not you have a dad coach or whether or not you have a paid coach. And so that's this like overly talked about. I know it's like, you might be thinking like, oh my gosh, we've already had this discussion. I've seen the posts and the crazy threads within online groups. I'm done with this conversation. It's important though. We need to actually have a conversation that allows us to get to a conclusion that's healthier for us to make a decision for our kids. What's happening right now, I don't think parents are armed with information that's leading them to the best decision for their kids. I think they're being led to a decision based on public perception and based on the hidden agendas of people that have been pushing this over the years. So that leads parents to a very dangerous position to make a decision based on what they're reading or hearing. So that's why we're going to have a conversation. And ultimately, that's the mission of this podcast. The mission of this podcast is having this incredible conversation with parents so that we're armed to make great decisions for our kids, so that we can be better mentors and guide them to whatever it is they're trying to get out of athletics. Remember, that's different for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all process. And so we've got to figure out what's best for our kids. And I don't want us to be necessarily so influenced by what's out there because, again, like I said before, there could be a hidden agenda there that is, laced into all of these things that they're pushing you. So be careful. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. That's why this coaching situation is important. Paid coach versus this daddy label coach. What is better? Is there a best? And so that's what we're going to be doing now. And so let's get back to the stereotypes as it relates to the differences between those two things, and see if maybe we can arrive to that by default of this discussion before I start injecting my own personal opinion here. And listen, like everyone else, I also have a very strong opinion as it relates to this particular subject. Now, for the positive and the negatives of the daddy coach, let's talk about that first. And the first one, and there's really two main ones here, and then we'll discuss some other ones, but the two main concerns that people have as it relates to daddy coaches, and they create this they attach this absolute perception when it comes to all dad coaches, which is an unfair label. You can't attach that absolute there, but number one is favoritism. And then number two is they're unqualified and they lack of experience. If they're a dad, therefore, right, they do this weird Pythagorean theorem, and they're like, well, if it's a dad coach, that means that they must be playing favoritism and that they must be unqualified. And that is an untrue statement. You can be a dad and also be a great coach. But there's an understanding there. Why? Because there has been situations where dads have coached, dads are coaching, and where it's clear that they're playing favoritism, where maybe it's clear that they're in the position and they're not really qualified to be there. And so just because that does happen doesn't mean that that's what happens all of the time. So it's important to make that distinction right there. Now, we have to also be an understanding of why that is. Why is there a team coached by a dad who's unqualified? Well, if you do a little digging and respectfully, have these conversations, you might find maybe that team or that organization has kids that really want to play, but they simply don't have the coaching resources. They don't have people who are in a position, who are experienced that can coach. But here was a great dad, loves his kid, loves the community, loves the kids, doesn't want to fold the team. They want to continue creating the opportunity. So what does this dad do? What maybe the other ones weren't able to do. He steps up and says, you know what? I might not be qualified, but I will be present. And for that situation, that's great because, again, no two kids are the same. They all have different journeys, right? Some of them, their path, they're trying to play in college, they're trying to go play professionally, right? And other kids, they just want to play with their friends. So number one is being honest and realistic and more self-aware about the situation. And if the situation is you have a group of kids that just want to play with each other, with their friends, and they want to continue, and you don't have any experience of coaches, well, guess what? Why is the option to eliminate that team simply because you don't have a qualified coach? If that's the only available option, here's my vote. Have the team. Schedule games. Let the kids play because there's more to learning for them in that experience than just winning. There's so much more to learn that as maybe an invested dad or an invested mom who's present in that situation, you're just simply now creating an opportunity. So we can't be so quick to jump the gun here and attach an absolute saying, oh, it's a dad coach, he is unqualified, this is a terrible situation. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into this particular situation to learn about it, because no two things are the same, and that's an unfair stereotype that you're attaching to that without understanding the full situation. Now, as far as favoritism, here's a tough thing, and we can have a long discussion. This could be a whole podcast series, but I'm just going to very quickly touch on this. Does it exist? Yes. Is there a thing called nepotism? Yes. That's why there's a word in the dictionary for it, right? It happens. However, there is a situation where a coach who could be a dad is playing their child in a position or maybe in a certain place in the batting order because they deserve it. Isn't it possible that maybe that child is just really good and deserving of it? Is that favoritism? No. But publicly, because we decide to attach these general rules of thumb, if they're a dad, they're playing favoritism, therefore their kid doesn't deserve it. Well, we've already gone down this bad road. We're already down this rabbit hole where we're not going to arrive to a healthy conclusion, because there are situations where maybe the child is deserving of that position. So we've got to, remember, I said this before, be honest and more self-aware about the situation. Now, it also is possible that there are dads who do play favorites. And so I'm not saying that this is a perfect world. We are imperfect beings, and it's unfair to project perfection in these situations. So it's going to happen. And myself, listen, I'm not a perfect individual. I've not made the correct decision every single time in my entire life. I sometimes make the incorrect decision. But here's what I think is really healthy for now those of you guys who maybe are dad coaches and are parents in these situations. How about this? You have to also now be approachable, because you are dealing with a delicate situation where you're coaching your own kids. You have to be aware that, listen, there are public perceptions that are going to be attached to this particular situation, and you have to be sensitive to it. Now, sometimes you might make a mistake as it relates to decisions for the team, and that might even include your children. You know what's great? Be approachable. Make sure there's a fluid conversation that all the athletes on that team knows that they can be comfortable and confident having with you. Make sure there's a fluid conversation that the parents on the team know that they can be comfortable and confident having with you. You have transparency, then you have a much better, healthier path of success as a coach in the situation where you're a dad coaching a team that has your kids. So you're probably already sensing some of my opinions on the matter, because there are some wonderful positives as it relates for having your child on a team where the coach has their child as well. And I'm going to now bring my personal situation into it. Now, I'm an experienced coach. I've been coaching for over 20 years. I'm experienced in this world of athletics. I'm the executive director of an athletic association. I played at a very high level. I was a full scholarship Division I baseball player. So I've got the chops, the expertise, the background. I've played myself. I've coached. I've got the chops to back it up. But I'm also a dad. So because I'm a dad that has a child on my team, does that make me unqualified? Of course not. So that's why we have to now find out what really is the best interest of our kids. Now, here's the advantage of having the best of both worlds. What if the coach is like myself? You've got experience both coaching and playing, but you happen to have a child on the team. In my opinion, this is the best possible situation for you to choose for an opportunity for your kid to play on a team. And this, I know that's like, man, risking an arrogant statement, but I'm going to back it up. Now, for kids that are play on the teams that I coach, that also one of my kids are playing on, they're going to benefit from the fact that I'm personally invested into this team because my child's there. I'm going to want the very best for my kids in every aspect of that world. So, So that means any kid on my team is going to benefit from that. Added resources, extra time. I'm going to invest in creating an environment that benefits my kids, which means it benefits all of the kids. The entire team becomes family, and they get to benefit from that because the environment is good. Athletics, almost all sports, and not all, so there's a different discussion for things like tennis and whatnot, right? But for most sports, in this case, I'm talking about, let's say, baseball and softball, it's a team sport. There are 9 people on a field contributing to the outcome of a game, which means you need to, as a coach, invest to all of the kids on the roster because they're contributing to that outcome. So if you want the best for your kids, that means you're creating a good, strong, successful environment. All of the kids. The tide rises for all ships, which is why you have to invest in absolutely everyone and into the situation. So if you're on one of my teams, you're going to benefit from that. Now, doesn't it sound like a situation that you would want your kids to be in on a team where you've got experience, but now also a dad who happens to be a coach? They're going to get that extra attention. Now, here's also a little bit of sort of, we'll call it proof of concept. The paid coach is there to do a job. When you have a job, you have your job description, you've got your time commitments, and you're going to perform to the best of your abilities the duties and responsibilities of that job description, which means that's why there's a little bit less loyalty because there is a paycheck involved. However, when there's a paycheck involved, there is also an expectation that they're going to perform at a very high level. So there is a benefit to that. So I'm not saying paid coaches are bad. I'm saying, listen, paid coaches are great. It allows you to zero in and maybe target certain people who are experts in aspects of that particular sport or that particular game that you could bring in that maybe you as a coach, you can't maybe offer. Now, here's a great example. Is, let's say you're coaching a team and you were, the starting shortstop for a D1 program and you were a phenomenal middle infielder and you hit in the front of the order, right? And you were a righty, okay? And you weren't a pitcher though. So maybe you can offer this incredible insight on different aspects of being an infielder, of being a great hitter, base running, but you can't offer that same level of high-end knowledge as a pitcher. So what do? So you bring in a paid pitching coach to offset and supplement. That's amazing, right? That's a great environment where everything's working in tandem, and now you're getting the best of both worlds. So there's great advantages of paid coaches. There's great advantages of dads who happen to be coaches. And are there sometimes situations that are not perfect? 100%. But that shouldn't lead us to create these absolute stereotypes that move us away from any one of those directions. And that's what brings us to current. What has happened publicly is that organizations, because it's become a business over the last 20 years, organizations have put down their list of their sales pitch list, which is the list of assets and valuable things that their organization has that are differentiators of what they can do for your kid that maybe other organizations can't. And they list this out to try to attract new kids and new talent. Now, this list of things, it doesn't make it wrong. These lists of things are great things. These lists of things, but also are things that most organizations are actually doing, right? Most organizations are having multiple practices a week. And as they get older, they're incorporating strength and agility training. They're having separate pitchers and catchers workouts. Most organizations, especially for the older teams as they get older in high school, are starting the recruitment process of making families aware of the different college camps, the college workshops, the college showcases. They're pointing them in that direction, right? Most of them are doing these things. So I think up to parents, we have to stop just reading and believing and then acting on it. For example, stay away from any team that has a coach that's a dad and only pursue teams that have paid coaches. That type of absolute is going to lead you into a dangerous situation where ultimately you're risking having a bad experience because you made a decision on something that is not true and is not applicable to you. Instead, you need to be able to identify what is important to you and to your child and then make a decision on that. Some of the first things that are important for you and your child's athletic journey is, number one, being honest about their skill and being realistic about their age. That's the first thing that we need to do. Where are they in their skill journey and where are they in their passion journey as well? These young kids, you want to nurture the passion. You don't want to discourage them through burnout, especially when they're young. So being on a team that maybe is just average, but their friends are on that team, and man, your child just looks forward to going to every practice, looks forward to going to every single game, even though maybe they even lose most of the games. Let me tell you something. That's okay, because guess what you're doing there? You're nurturing the passion so that now they can mature as an athlete, because they're going to stick with it. They're going to want to practice more. They're going to want to play more. By default, time weeds out kids that want to do it and are skilled to do it, and then kids that don't want to do it anymore because maybe they're not skilled or for there's some other reason. Let that process happens naturally, in sort of the ages of between 10 and like 13, 14 years old. That'll happen naturally. Let that happen naturally. In the beginning, let kids love the sport. Trust me, if they love the sport, they will want to play the sport. They'll want to practice the sport. That's so very, very important. And then the other thing is being honest about the skill of your child. Is we have a tendency as parents to have these big, ambitious dreams. I have big, ambitious dreams for my kids as well. I also have to be honest about who they are, what they want to do, and their skill level, so that the experience that I place them in, these situations that I place them in, yes, it's challenging, but also gives them the best chance of success in that moment. We've got to be self-aware enough about our kids and their journey and where they are, so that we're putting them in good, healthy environments. Because I can tell you, and we'll deal with this in future episodes. I know a lot of friends of mine growing up, they were phenomenal ball players, but they quit early because of burnout. They quit early because of the expectations that was placed on them, and they just didn't want to do it anymore. And they quit before maybe they even reached their full potential. And you know what? That breaks my heart, and that's sad. And that's why we have to have this discussion. And the topic of paid coach versus dad coach is an important one, because it's all connected. As a parent, should you be learning whether or not the team that your child is on, travel team that they're on, is a paid coach versus a dad coach? Yeah, 100%. But you shouldn't just be making a decision on whether or not they are a paid coach or whether or not they're a dad coach. The questions should not stop there, because you didn't discover anything of importance yet. You need to continue asking the questions and observations, and give your kid a chance. Give the coach a chance. See them in their environment. Are they caring about my kid? Are they investing into my child? Are they uplifting them? Are they mentoring them as an individual? Are they giving them and instilling them confidence? We just talk about the physical aspect of sports, and we don't at all value the mental and the mental aspect of mental training and psychological training, and then also psychological damages that sports and how we approach it as parents and coaches has on kids. And that's something that we need to be educated more on, and understanding that that's a variable. Whether or not they're paid is not as big of a variable as you would think. So don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't just give into the sales pitch of, you got to find a paid coach. Oh, come to our organization. We're all paid coaches. That doesn't mean that they're good. That doesn't mean that they're experienced. That doesn't mean that they're skilled. That does not mean they're going to invest and care about your kid. But it also doesn't mean that they won't. That's why you have to continue asking the appropriate questions. What's important for your kid? Ready? Number one, depends on how old they are. Number two, what is their skill level, and being honest about that. And number three, what are their goals? And now you start developing a plan around those three things and trying to find a great environment for your child based on that, not based on whether or not the coach is paid or whether or not the coach has a kid on the team. It's the other factors that are really the difference makers. I'm going to end with this, with one more story. And I have a lot of them as it relates to this particular situation, but I got one that just popped in my head that I want to share. I have one person, a dad that I know, who has a daughter that plays softball. And he made a decision solely on the fact that the team that the daughter is on is coached by people who are paid and have zero kids. It was more important for this individual for their child to be on a team where the coach had zero kids on the team. And even though they liked me as an individual, they saw that we had great results with our team, it didn't matter because they were informed of this stereotype to avoid teams. Don't let your daughter play on a team where the coach also has a kid. And so they played on 2 different teams. A year later, that family is now with us. That child is playing on my team. And why? Because the experience that they expected based on that decision did not match what they were promised. And they realized that ultimately that's not the right question that they should have been asking. That was not the right differentiator when determining what was best for their kids. Because having a paid coach did not result in having a better experience at all. Now, being on one of my teams, they are having a better experience. They're realizing the investment in the child and the mentorship and everything else that comes along with it. It really does matter. So let's boil it down and let's sort of end this discussion today, because we can, all of us, I know all of us can talk about this for a long time, and I know I am going to get a lot of heat, and I know once this episode goes live, I have no doubt my phone is going to blow up from organizations that are going to feel like maybe I was too critical of the fact that they lean on paid coach, which, by the way, the organization that I'm a part of, we have teams with paid coaches. I'll be honest, I'm not a paid coach because I am not doing this as a job. I'm doing this because it's for my children, and I care so much about them. I care so much about the kids that are on their team and just creating a positive environment where they all have an opportunity to grow. We expect excellence, but we can also have those other things in there. So let's wrap it up. Let's put a little bow on this in conclusion. Dad coach versus paid coach. Number one, I think we have to do away with the label of dad coach because it has a negative connotation, because it's been branded as if it's dad coach, it is bad. Absolutes don't exist in this particular world. We need to eliminate that. And we also, I don't think, should just be talking in a negative light about teams that have paid coaches, because just like there are experiences that could be maybe negative and bad and not up to par with a dad coach, same thing applies to paid coaches. They might be bad sometimes and insensitive and not fully invested, and they do the bare minimum. But guess what? There could be paid coaches that are amazing, and they happen to be paid, and they happen to also just love your kids, and they're fully invested. Listen, that happens as well, which is why for me, we need to eliminate that as the primary deciding factor whether or not to pursue an organization or to join a team. That could be one question, but it can't be the question. We need to get to a healthier place. We're eliminating that as the variable. We've been guided, and fraudulently been guided to think that that is the only thing that matters when determining what team your child should be playing on. Let that just be part of the conversation and guide you to the best questions that you should be asking, what it has to do with finding out what's the best environment for your kids. Parents, remember, it's different for everyone. There's no one size fits all. Also, when they're younger, it's different. When they're older, it's different. We have to understand what that journey looks like. So if you're going to ask me, if this was a parent pulling me aside and asking me for specific advice, this would be the advice I would give to a kid who's maybe 9, 10, 11 years old playing travel sports. Here's my advice. Pick a team where your child has friends on and they want to go every single day, where the coach is uplifting. I would never talk about if they're their dad, if they're paid. That's irrelevant to me. It does not matter. Does the kid want to play? Are they looking forward to playing? Is it a healthy environment? Because when you're young, what supplements the team is your private instruction and your disciplined training on your own. When they're young, nurture the passion. Now, when they start getting a little bit older, they're 12, 13, 14. This is the critical age of accountability and decisions. Most kids quit between 12 and 14. This is where the cream rises to the top and there's lots of separation that goes on. Let it happen. At the next stage, we have to be okay with our kids saying that they don't want to play. That's a hard thing as a parent. And I'm not saying they quit everything. Definitely always need to be active and immersed in learning. But if they say, listen, baseball's not my thing, or field hockey is not my thing, I'd rather be doing this. As a parent, we have to then have that discussion with them and be okay with that. Now, as they get older, now they're in high school. Now this becomes really important. What they do is important for the next steps. The conversation has to be, hey, are you just playing for today? That's okay. Or are you playing for tomorrow and you want to play in college or beyond? Then you got to start making decisions based on what environment helps to develop the skill so that they can now be discovered by the public. There's a whole method to that. And guess what? Notice I didn't say paid coach or dad coach, because it doesn't matter. What matters is finding an environment that encourages that type of situation so you get the result ultimately and leads you to a best position of making a healthy decision for our kids. Paid coach, daddy coach, for me, I don't care about the labels. It doesn't matter if you're paid $1 zillion or you're paid no dollars and you have a kid on the team. What matters most to me is, are you going to help my kid love the sport? Are you going to invest in my kid and make sure it's a positive experience? And are you going to give them the tools and the resources so that they can be successful? Let's start there, and then we can grow it out, because it shouldn't be put all on the coach. It should not be put all on the organization. There's also some accountability there as well. And that's what we're going to be talking about in future episodes, is what should kids be doing on their own that's not the responsibility of the coach, not the responsibility of the team. What are they responsible for doing on their own to help them get to the next level? That's going to be our next discussion. That's a great one. That is a great one. I'm looking forward to that. I hope this offered some value. If I highly offended you, well, I'm sorry, and you can reach out to me anytime you want, and let's have a discussion and let's talk it out. I'd love to listen. I want to know your perspective. Did I miss something here? Right? Maybe you have a really great argument to defend your situation. Reach out. Let's have that discussion. I love learning. I love really having new perspectives offered to me. And listen, I don't know everything. I do know something. But I think the best thing is that we all should be growing together. Contribute to this community. I want to hear from you guys. Share it with someone else, because guess what? The tide rises for all ships. The more we help everyone, the more we help everyone. Okay? So guys, thanks for tuning in to Raising Athletes. We'll see you next time. Take care.